Welcome and thank you for joining this Magento Commerce sponsored webinar featuring PDM Automotive, Classy Llama, and 3Kit. My name is Giancarlo Ospina, and I'm the Marketing Director at Classy Llama. I will be your point of contact today, so if you have any questions, let me know. Today, we have three experts here to present on the future tech of automotive e-commerce. But before we start, I'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors and contributors. Magento Commerce by Adobe is a leading platform for open commerce innovation. Every year, the Magento platform handles over 100 billion in gross merchandise volume. We are thankful for the sponsorship of this event. Today's session on Headless product data strategy will be hosted by Johannes Crepon. Johannes is the founder and CEO of PDM Automotive, an automotive PIM platform that enables manufacturers and retailers to create, maintain, and distribute high-quality data in real time across all channels. Johannes is not only an expert in automotive data standards, but has years of experience in the retailing of automotive parts across the world. Johannes, welcome, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Gio. Thanks for having us.
Today's session on selecting an e-commerce agency and tips for a successful build will be hosted by Brandon Urich. Brandon is the head of solutions at Classy Llama, an e-commerce and digital agency with over 12 years of experience building e-commerce solutions for brands like GA Automotive, ZZ Performance, and Summit Racing. Welcome, Brandon. Thank you for contributing to this webinar today.
Thanks, glad to be here.
Today's session on digital content, 3D, and virtual photography strategies for automotive parts makers will be hosted by Mark Ubel with an exciting demo by Matt Seeger. Mark is the VP of Marketing at 3Kit. His goal is to help companies customize their products in 3D, augmented reality, and virtual photography. Mark has spent the last decade doing marketing for PayPal and being an entrepreneur. Matt Seeger is the VP of Solutions Engineering at 3Kit. Matt helps discerning brands create amazing visual buying experiences across a wide variety of e-commerce platforms, tools, and partners. Matt has deep experience running teams across configure price quote solutions for startups and enterprises like Oracle and Salesforce. Mark, Matt, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. I'm excited to show you guys some really cool 3D and augmented reality for auto parts.
Oh, it's going to be great. So
Amen.
now to the sessions. Each session will last around 55 minutes. This includes both the speaker's presentation and time for questions and answers. During the sessions, the Q&A, use the Q&A feature at the bottom located on your menu bar to submit questions. At the end of each session, the speakers will try their best to get to your question, but if your questions are not answered, don't fret. We will provide you with contact information so you can reach out after the event. Between each session, there will be about a 5-minute break for you to gather yourselves, go get a drink, and during that time, you can answer some poll questions directly here on Zoom. If at any time during the event you need help or you need to leave, you're more than welcome to come back later for another session or wait to receive the recording of this live event via email. The first session will be starting soon after a brief break and our first poll. If you need any help during the event, please message me directly through the chat feature located in your menu bar. To find me, just search Classy Llama. Thanks again for joining us, and I really hope you guys enjoy the event.
All right, nice fade out, Gio. Appreciate it. Very good, awesome. Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for Classy Llama and Magento putting this together. We're super excited to be part of this webinar. Yeah, thanks for the intro, Gio. My name is Johannes Crepon. I'm the founder and CEO of PDM Automotive. On the call today as well is Laurel, responsible for sales within PDM. So as Gio already said, reach out to her during the session, use the Q&A functionality of Zoom, so we make sure that we get to your questions after the webinar or after the presentation, my presentation. First off, headless product data strategy. So what does that mean? I guess some of you are asking yourself that. And the idea is really for us that if you manage your data, and you will see throughout the presentation, we are addressing parts manufacturers as well as resellers and data receivers, as we call them, just to summarize. It's really important for us that you, when you're managing your data, you can use that for any channel that you want to go into. So keeping your data headless, so to speak, and not building it just for one purpose is very important, because then you do get the highest efficiency and the highest ROI out of your data. So therefore, keeping the data headless from a strategy standpoint is what we want to provide to you. Hence, headless product data strategy. PDM was started in 2017. I myself have a background of 15 years in the automotive space. I've always been more on the data receiving, the data consuming side of the industry. So I suffered years from receiving poor quality data, and then in 2017 I said, okay, this is something that obviously needs to be solved, and started PDM, and it has been a wild ride so far. Put together an amazing team. And we are truly a technology first company. So it's really important for us to provide our members, because we're a platform, we're connecting parts manufacturers and parts receivers. It's important to provide the technology that really empowers you to take ownership over product data, data management, the utilization of the data, and really get you make it efficient for you to participate in the automotive space. And that is really across different sizes of companies. So we have a lot of boutique specialty brands in on our platform that are managing their data out of the restoration space, out of the performance space, off-roading space, but then also large enterprise clients like the First Brands group with brands most of you will probably recognize, such as Autolite, Fram, Trico, Carter, etc. Drive Group just recently joined. So again, really trying to provide technology that supports everybody in the automotive space to easily work with data and provide all of the information where it needs to go. And essentially, one of the ways where it needs to go is retailers and your customers. So getting the data over to and the product information and connect you with big retail chains such as Advanced Auto Parts, AutoZone. We're an eBay development partner. Is crucial there as well. So we're proud to work with these outstanding companies to get the data their way, the way that they need it, the way that then the most parts can get sold. Industry is very important for us. As I said, I've been in this industry forever. Most of our team members have been in this industry forever. So it's really important for us to also give back. There are great associations that I can only encourage everybody to join if you are not already members. One important one, obviously, Auto Care Association, because they are the entity behind the automotive industry data standards. And this is really where a lot of the technology that we also utilize revolves around. And it really defines the way that in the automotive industry, you're exchanging information, you are talking to your trading partners. So becoming a member of Auto Care or of one of the networks that they are providing is always of great benefit for yourself and also for the industry itself. Now, we're proud to have partnered with Auto Care over the last 2 years and judged the ACPN Content Excellence Awards. So that involved us analyzing data of the largest parts manufacturers out there, giving a score back to Auto Care for them to then crown the winner. And this is really right in our ballpark, because PDM is all about high quality data and putting our technology to use. And the technology, in a nutshell, we have it split up in 5 categories, and you see it here being somewhat grouped for brands and for resellers. It's not necessarily that this is the like only being used by one or the other, but this is just a good way to describe it. And on the brand side, so more on the data generating side. So if you're a reseller and you build your own data, obviously all of the features that are listed here on the left would also apply. On the brand side, it's all about easily creating data. So everybody on the call, I assume, has somehow touched the product information, the product data, trying to get that from A to B. Creating data in automotive is is complex. It's not as easy as selling a T-shirt where you have a size and a fabric and a color, and that pretty much describes your product. It can become very complex if you have an oil seal that fits thousands of different vehicles. So creating the data is important to make that easy, but then also maintaining it on an ongoing basis. Given that we have standards like ACES and PIEs from the Auto Care Association, there is not only your internal data that you have to keep up to date, you also have to continuously comply with external standards such as ACES and PIEs. They're getting structurally updated almost on a yearly basis, where new functionality is being added, but then the content itself is getting updated on a monthly basis. New vehicles are getting added, vehicles are getting deleted or changed. So making it easy to maintain that data is the second bucket, so to speak, of our technology. And then distribute that data. So after you have built data, you want to make sure it goes where it needs to go. And if you are a brand, if you're a manufacturer, you want to make sure that that data goes to your customers. You want to make sure it goes to marketplaces and obviously to your e-commerce website. That kind of overlaps with the utilization, which is more of the technology component. So the distribution is really connecting entities. PDM is a platform. We have not only parts manufacturers managing and building their catalog data and inventory and pricing information, but also the resellers and the companies that want to utilize that data. They have access to that product information, which gets us to the fifth point here, which is accessing information. And that goes beyond the parts manufacturers that are natively on PDM managing their data, but we allow or enable resellers and companies that consume product information to channel the data into the system from all different repositories that are out there, with the goal to provide one single source for all of the data for it to then be utilized. And obviously one of the channels, e-commerce. This is what today is all about: how to support and how to like giving you a background of what is relevant in the realm of data when you want to use it to feed into an e-commerce channel. Those are a couple of the websites that are being used by or being operated by our customers, driven from the data that they have in their system, which goes simultaneously to all of their retailers, all of their customers, and connects to their internal ERP system. So there again, the whole vision that we have to give you the ability to manage your data in a headless idea and getting it out there where it needs to go. Just a brief clarification on terminologies, just because you will hear me saying receivers sometimes, and that is what we really see: anybody consuming data from a lot of different manufacturers, and then obviously individual manufacturers can also be connected with different receivers, but manufacturers and receivers are essentially the two main focus groups. So we differentiate, however, many of the functionalities are overlapping. All right, great. Let's start with the first topic: why clean data is key to success. I'm sure it's obvious that cleaner data is better than unclean data. So we don't have to talk so much about the reason behind why the clean data is the key to success, but more so what makes data clean. How is that defined? And when we talk to our customers and when we present on this topic, it always boils down to three main topics that you have to be aware of. And this can be on the one side for you as a parts manufacturer, actually building the data, but also when you are an entity consuming the data, you also can use these three rules to understand how good is actually the data that you are receiving, and it gives you a good ability to speak with your trading partners on assuring high quality data. So let's start with the first one, granularity. And you see here two examples. I mean, both sides, left and right, do pretty much give you the same information. Both say, okay, this part fits a 2015 Ford Mustang. So it's the same information, but it's structured differently. On the left side, if you just imagine an Excel sheet, on the left side, 2015 Ford Mustang would all be in one cell, whereas on the right side, 2015 Ford Mustang would be in 3 individual cells or columns in your Excel sheet. And it's important that while you as a human, it's easy, you say, okay, yep, it fits a 2015 Ford Mustang. I understand it. It may even look nicer to you if it's all in one cell rather than in 3 cells. But down the road, if you want to utilize that data for a lot of different purposes and make it and keep it headless, this is where when you start like this, you're pretty much screwed to go down the road. So you want to make sure to keep your data granular in the first place. You rather stick on the too granular side and than on the not too granular side, because it's always easy to combine data later on if you feel that is necessary. But essentially, what this now allows you is that you have when you keep the data granular, like it is on the right side, you can use those data points and actually just build a string that reads 2015 Ford Mustang. Because today is all about e-commerce and web shops. So getting the data onto your e-commerce site, if you imagine your e-commerce site, how you want that to look like, you say, okay, up here, I want to have a description. On the right side, I want to have a full summary of all of the fitment information. And then maybe somewhere for SEO purposes, you want to have all the makes individually listed so that you can say this is an oil ring that fits onto a Ford, a Mercury, maybe a Chevy, maybe some European vehicles. So you want to, if that is like your goal, again, coming from the desired end result, you have to make sure that your data is granular in the first place to be able to put that data in all of those different locations in those different configurations. Because the second topic is avoiding redundancy. And redundancy is pretty much the result from not having granular data, because you say, okay, I have my short description summary, or my short description, my short fitment information, such as 2015 Ford Mustang. But I also want to have an application summary, like a nice text that somebody can read. And then you start typing, this part fits a 2015 Ford Mustang. The big problem that is the next day you may find out, okay, this part actually also fits the 2016 Ford Mustang. So then you go in and say, okay, I'm going to update it here at the fitment information, because this is obviously where my fitment information is hosted. And you may already have forgotten about that manually entered application summary that you have written the day before. If you have granular data and you keep the data structured and avoid redundancy, meaning that you only manage your fitment information, you can then actually take that information that you have in the granular structure and compile it into a nice to read fitment summary or application summary. So there again, having the data granular in the first place allows you to avoid redundancy, because you will have the data in multiple locations, and especially if you're looking to use your data for different channels, you will need it curated in different ways. But having it granular will allow you to do so without actually having redundant data down the road. So this is the number 2. And then number 3 was ID based. And no presentation goes by without a little aces and pies talk. And the QDB is one of the underrated, well, not underrated, but not, in our opinion, not enough used element of aces and pies. And again, aces and pies is the industry standard. Actually, let me just go one slide forward. It's part of the industry standard that AutoCare is managing and maintaining, and it essentially gives you a full list of tables with valid values. And this is what also is part of the QDB. So the QDB is you can call it footnotes for fitment, for instance. So the QDB gives you a lot of different over 20,000 different options of footnotes to associate with fitment. So if you're selling, in this case, as an example, you're selling a piston. That piston may have be second oversize. So, and I'm saying second oversize. You may be tempted, if you're doing a free text rather than using an ID-based piece of information, you may be tempted to just write 2ND oversize, which again, out of a human viewpoint, it's the same piece of information. You are providing that information to the reader, but to a computer, if that then needs to be consumed by a computer, it's hard to normalize that data. So if you use ID-based information, and again, tables that are already predefined are very helpful instead of you actually building your own IDs and a list of IDs. So stick to a structure that already exists, because again, this will now allow you, if you have multiple products with that same information, it will then allow you to use that in a faceted search on your web store. So if you want to allow your customers to filter by the oversize of a piston that you're selling, using that data ID based in the first place is essential to be able to do so. And as I've said, sticking to an existing structure and tables is much easier than building it yourself, especially when you want to exchange that information, which essentially is what ACES and PIES is all about, to make it easy for you to exchange information across the industry. And the standards include a lot of different tables for fitment, the qualifiers I just mentioned, categorization, brands, and then also attributes. So there is a lot of value to get out of ACES and PIES, even if your intention is not to primarily exchange it with trading partners, but actually use it for your homepage. And being aware of the structure and the values is important to understand the necessity to avoid working in silos. So currently in automotive, unfortunately, it's still very much so that data is being managed in silos. So you typically have, and this is more now speaking out of a manufacturer's, out of a brand lens, you typically have internal data. So that can be your ERP system, it can be an Excel sheet. This is like your initial where you started to manage your data, and you have your part numbers, you may have like a short description, maybe some dimensions and a price. So this is like your internal data, what you consider to be the origin. This is where everything is starting. And then you have trading partners that approach you and say, hey, if we were to get ACES and PIES, it would be great, because then we could use that and list the products on our homepage. So you're working on ACES and PIES data. So you're taking your internal data and supplementing it with the necessary data points for it to become rich data compliant with the ACES and PIES structure. And then you realize, okay, now I have ACES and PIES, which is great because it has a lot more information than just my internal data. So you go beyond just the dimensions, beyond just the pricing. You have picture associations and fitment information and features and benefits. And so it's a much more sophisticated data for you to share with your trading partners. But some trading partners may say, nah, ACES and PIES XML files, I can consume that. I need an Excel sheet. So you're then taking your ACES and PIES data and converting it into an Excel sheet. And then you realize, oh, wait, we have an e-commerce website, and actually would be nice to list some of that information on our e-commerce website as well. And obviously you're not using ACES and PIES XML structure, because no e-commerce website would just take the ACES and PIES data and beautifully display that on the website. So you're then taking that Excel sheet that you have converted out of your ACES and PIES data to put it into your e-commerce website. So you already probably took 2 minutes to now explain the 4 silos, but you get the point that it's really it's always a matter of converting. So you have each use case has its own silo, and if you then say I have a new product in my internal data, it takes too long to get it into ACES and PIES, but I want to have it by the end of the day in my e-com website. You're then going to start to add individual SKUs to your e-com website. So it's a big issue if this is the way you work, and this is how a lot of people work. And this is why it's important to have a centralized data repository. And this is essentially what PDM provides you with, giving you one place where you can manage your data for all the different channels, and you will still obviously have an ERP system where that may be your origin for your product once you set it up. But it is important to make sure that all the data that you are managing has a structure and has one origin. And if the part number and the dimensions and the pricing have their origin in the ERP system, that's okay. And then the PIM system can be fed from the ERP system with that information. However, if you're then managing fitment information, that should be in your central data repository and then go into all other channels rather than always exporting, converting data, uploading it somewhere. So you're having that trail of data that you or the trace of data that you're laying, but having it all in one repository really then allows you to make your data so much more useful for many channels. And we'll talk a little bit later in a few slides down the road here about data governance. But having your data in a centralized data repository does then allow you to get it into any channel where you want it to be. And channel is obviously sales channels such as marketplaces, your e-com web store, but also different technologies that allows you to get that data into channels that that are not necessarily directly connected with you. But an API is very powerful. If you have your data granular in a structure in a central repository that allows you to access that data via an API, you can feed that into any other system that has the same capabilities to be accessed via an API. Or again, Excel sheets, that's the go-to format of exchanging information if it doesn't necessarily have to be automatically consumed by a system, but it is easy to use an Excel sheet for smaller retailers, for instance, to be able to read the data. XML, obviously, as part of ACES and PIs, CSV, mostly the go-to file format if you manually want to upload data somewhere, and then direct integrations into e-com web stores. So again, to summarize, keeping your data granular, avoiding redundancy. Keeping your data granular allows you to avoid redundancy, and having it ID based, which again, then all of that in a central data repository and not spread across different files and versions of your data is really the key to great data, which then allows you to increase sales and just be successful with your data strategy. All right. Number 2 is the importance of telling a unified story. And you've already seen, like my silo example there was really about making sure that the data that you have throughout the marketplace, and that can be again actual marketplaces such as eBay and Amazon or your e-com site and your customers, you want to make sure that the data is everywhere the same. Ideally, you will never have full control about where the data is being used. And again, speaking now out of a manufacturer lens, but also if we talk out of the reseller lens, you as a reseller, you also want to make sure that you know what's the story that the manufacturer actually wants to tell. So you want to make sure that you have proper information. And this is the example here. This is a customer of ours. These screenshots were from prior to them joining PDM. So I hope by now the data is updated. But the issue here is really that on the left side, which is their own homepage, they are listing this particular part to fit an 07 through 18 Jeep Wrangler. And then on the right side, which is a screenshot actually from Amazon, they are listing that product to only fit an 07 through 17. So first off, challenge number 1 would be, if somebody has an 18 Jeep Wrangler and that person is on Amazon, that product would not show up. So there's already a lost sales opportunity right there. But then also the next challenge is that if that consumer looks on Amazon and he finds the product and says, okay, this looks interesting, I want to look on the manufacturer's homepage. And on the manufacturer's homepage, it's different information. That just gives like an unpleasant feeling to the consumer, because it's inconsistent information and it's unclear really, does this part actually now fit my vehicle or doesn't it? So it paints a picture on the brand, not only the product, but also the brand, because it gives this uncertainty in the course of researching the product that somebody would want to buy. It's just another example, various pictures, various different names. So it's simply unclear, where it takes some more research unnecessarily to really understand what the product is about and what are the details. And to achieve this unified story, first off, again, a centralized data repository is the key here, but also the ability for your company and everybody within the company to collaborate. So this applies to both parts manufacturers as well as the resellers. The ability to bring your entire team in and work on the same data set, therefore having it centralized, but also being able for different departments to contribute, such as R&D can contribute information around fitment, marketing will contribute copies and text, and then you have a photographer that provides digital assets for the products. So the ability to collaborate and have all of that in a centralized repository is really the key for you to get your data into a unified stage, and then making sure that across all the different channels where that data is being displayed, it actually also looks the same and paints a proper picture about your brand. Because down the road, your data is your DNA. This is really what it's all about, especially nowadays, where most of the business is all being done digitally. I mean, pandemic even more than before, but you have to understand out of a manufacturer perspective, the data that you send out, that is the truth pretty much to anybody receiving it, and that is what is being worked with. So this is what represents your brand. You may have a beautiful homepage, and you may have your salespeople may have pitched new products and everything to your trading partners, but down the road, the data is what will be used by your trading partners to represent your brand. So this is what really makes the difference then for how you are displayed. So and one example that I like to use is a print catalog. So if you print a catalog, you spend a lot of time making sure that you have all the products that you want to list in your catalog. You're making sure that you have high resolution images, that the layout is nice, that products that are similar are comparable, etc. So it's really important for you to make sure that the catalog meets your requirements. So you take pride in that catalog while it's being created and while it's being put together. And then you send the file off to the printer, and you get a big palette back with a bunch of catalogs, and you pick it up and you flip through it, and you're proud. You really like what you see. You say, all right, this really represents my company. And the same then also goes with the sales opportunities. So those catalogs are obviously not for your own internal purpose primarily, but they are to be shared with your trading partners. So if you're at a retail location and that catalog lays on a counter, a consumer comes in, they see the catalog, they flip through it, they find a part they like, they get the information they need. It's all there, they're good to go, they make the purchase. If that catalog looks like the one on the left, they may not even consider looking into it because it's simply not appealing. And the same exact thing applies to your data. If your data, you may not even be found, because if the consumer walks in and says, I have a 2018 Jeep Wrangler, and then the counter person looks up a product, your data was not up to date and it only lists up to 2017, you're not even getting found. All right. If you have 2018, you're getting found, but if then there are no images, there are poor descriptions, the information is not cohesive, it doesn't make sense, you're going to lose that sale. So take just as much pride in your product data than you do when printing a catalog, because again, your data is your DNA. That is what is getting sent out there, and it may very well trump even your printed catalog. I mean, nobody at a reseller location goes through the catalog and writes down what you put into the catalog. They are using what is being used or what is being provided in the data. And again, out of a reseller perspective, same scenario. You obviously, that is what you receive. That is what you have to work with, what you want to work with. So you want to make sure that the data is in the right quality. All right, we are mostly all of us are in this game to make some money. So the ROI is obviously very important. And data governance is a big word, but it is very important, and it is very relevant to making this all work and putting this together. And I would like to touch on some of these topics individually, and go through what I've explained so far. And ownership is the first one. So ownership, obviously, with a system like PDM, you're not working in your own system only by yourself. You have the ability to connect to your trading partners. So if you look at ownership from an external standpoint, it is important that you make sure that the data you're sending out you still remain ownership over that data. So you do want to make sure that you're not giving away ownership. But then also internally, from a technology standpoint, we talked about making sure that that you have one system taking ownership over that data over other systems. So you have an ERP system that owns part number and prices, and then you have a PIM system that owns digital assets and marketing copy. So this is where ownership has a lot of different layers. Then accessibility. So you want, again, connecting you with your trading partners. You want to make sure that your data is accessible to your trading partners in the way that it should be accessible. So also there, important to have some barriers and not just wildly throw the data out there, but then also internally. Only people that on a need-to-know basis should really be able to access the data. So if you have somebody that manages pricing, yeah, sure, they need access to the prices, but somebody that uploads photos, they may not have access to prices. So being able to control access to the data is a crucial step. And then security kind of plays into the same topic like accessibility. Obviously, accessibility has an additional component of providing the right technology to make data accessible. So it could be different export formats, it could be an API. And then the security component is this layer of making sure that you can revoke access also internally as well as externally. And you do have a proper process for that in place throughout your company. And one of the biggest ones is quality, because that is very much what PDM is about, making sure that you have quality in your ability to connect, but also quality in your data. And data quality is it's really dependent on the channel that you are working with. So if you have a system internally or a process internally that calculates your shipping rates, for that purpose, it's important, and data quality is defined by having measurements, because that is what defines the shipping price. So that would be quality in that particular case. If you have an e-commerce website, the dimensions may not matter at all. The e-com website may then use the shipping rates and everything, but for an e-com website, it's much more important to have a proper image, to have proper marketing copy, descriptions, etc. So it's really important to understand what am I, like, I'm touching the data at the moment, what am I touching it for, where is it being used, and what is important for that process, for that business partner, for that person internally, what is important from a data standpoint, and what would be considered high quality. So this is where quality really needs to be looked at from the lens of where it's being used. And then knowledge, this is a topic that also can be applied internally as well as externally, but more so internally, to really assure that throughout your team, everybody knows where data is being hosted. So all of the topics that we talked about here previously, ownership, accessibility, security, and quality. If it's unclear internally how they are being used, data governance is not going to work, because nobody will then have the proper knowledge and the proper ability to use it. So data governance is really around understanding how you're using data, where it's being used, putting together the right processes and choosing the right systems, the right architecture, then putting that out there and deploying that part, and then making sure it is properly being used and it can be used down the road. So it's really the concept of thinking through what you're doing when you're talking data and applying that to your company. Because again, I mean, this now we talked through, it obviously drives sales. So the more and the better data you have readily available, it drives sales. But more so than driving sales, it also avoids returns. And especially in automotive, it can be very expensive if you have a return that well, you never want to return. So if you have a return, just because you may be selling a $20 part, if the car is on the lift and it blocks a bay for 4 or 5 hours, you may have cost another, may produce cost another $500 simply by your $20 part not fitting. So quality data is not only to increase sales, but it is also very much so about reducing returns and assuring that the data you are, the products that you are providing does satisfy your customers. So you're hoping for the guy on the right rather than the guy on the left. All right, so now is the time to look a little bit into the PDM platform. So let me pull this up here real quick, and I would like to start here with a view of, so this is the view how a parts manufacturer sees the system. So we talked through all of the different topics around, again, data governance, data quality, the ROI of data, etc. So you can already tell on this screen, there are a lot of graphs and bars and numbers, which speaks to our focus to provide you feedback with the data quality that you have throughout your entire catalog. And that goes into different categories. You can configure everything yourself. So again, now talking out of the towards the manufacturer, and I would then also like to show you how a receiver sees the system. But essentially, if you're a manufacturer, you have access to your entire catalog. If you have multiple brands, which most of our customers actually have, all of those are available in the same system. And we look at the data either from a product perspective. So this is what the all products category, so to speak, is, where you can look at one product and then get all the information revolving around this product. And you can also look from an application standpoint. And again, once you're in the all products segment, here you can, in this case, in our demo account, we have 941 SKUs. You can have 10,000, 50,000, however many you have in your catalog. But you now have full access to every data point that is associated with this product. And we are complying with different standards. So a lot of these data points to whoever knows ACES and PIs on the call, they may look familiar because it is very much complying with the ACES and PIs requirements. So we go through all the different segments, all the way from item to digital assets. You can manage fully your fitment information in here as well. In this case, we have actually some parent-child relationships built out and established, so you can easily manage one product and then inherit the fitment down to multiple other products. We go work on to provide you with the attributes. This is where, if you recall from the presentation, the screen where I showed you the auto care tables. This is these are all the attributes that AutoCare recommends. So and just for you to also understand and relate to what I talked about, everything that is being done here is ID based in the background. Free flow rating as an attribute has an ID in the background, which allows you to particularly look for this attribute, for instance, or to translate this attribute, or to define which of the attributes do you want to use for a faceted search over which of the attributes you do not want to use for the faceted search. So this is where keeping the data granular and also in compliance with the standards that you want to adhere to is crucial. Package and pricing, so obviously can all be managed. Pricing, you can have multiple price sheets, connect that with your customers. Kind of jumping over these here real quick to not go into too much detail. We do also provide some basic functionality around digital asset management. So you can obviously upload your digital assets. They are then readily available for your customers to consume. They can also be provided via URLs. So there are a variety of ways to get that data into the hands of your customers. And talking about customers, so on the receiver side, so again, we're still in a manufacturer account, but for a manufacturer to see the receiver side, this is then essentially where you out of a manufacturer lens can connect to virtually any retailer out there, any large retailer, any marketplace and online sellers, and all of your customers can have their own free accounts. So there is no charge if you are managing the data on PDM, or even if you're just uploading it. We even have a free account available, so you can upload the data, get some robust validation feedback, and then you can connect that data to your customers. So it's very easy to keep your data up to date and make sure that it gets to the channels where it needs to go, because it's all happening in real time. When you're making a change in the UI, and this is then also where where you have the ability to immediately publish that data. So let's just click on this one and say, okay, publish. So if I were to publish this product now, or this change, it will be immediately available to all of your channels. And again, channels are your web store, channels are your customers, and channels are marketplaces. So the ability to connect your data in real time is crucial, and is what PDM is providing. And one of the recent releases that we had is another API. So we do have two different main APIs to connect PDM to external systems. And this is one of the APIs that a search API, which we just released. So if you're building an e-com website and want to integrate a make, model, year lookup, this is one of the APIs that we are now providing. So this is actually the first customer that is using it. And all of these data points are being provided by our API rather than your, that probably won't return a result, rather than your e-commerce website having to do all of the lookup. You can utilize our API and have that return all of the results. So this is all being driven live. We currently have a response rate from between 30 and 200 milliseconds. So it's obviously very important for the customer experience for that to be very quick. So hosting the data in PDM and then utilizing the API does give you a very efficient way to plug it into an e-commerce website. Let me just jump real quick to the receiver side. So if you are a reseller, and as I've mentioned before, we have the ability for you to not only connect to brands that are on PDM, but you can also easily connect to other data that is available out there. So in this reseller account has close to 1.6 million SKUs. Always the ability to preview the data. So even before utilizing that data for an e-commerce setup, this reseller can always preview the data and fully understand, hey, how good is the quality, what SKUs are available. You can filter by vehicles. So if you want to see what are all the brands that sell products for a Jeep Wrangler. So if you're specialized in Jeep Wrangler, you don't have to consume 1.6 million SKUs. You can simply consume the SKUs that are being necessary for your e-com website to run. And yes, and then obviously the same capabilities from an API standpoint. So you can easily use our API to get that data into an e-commerce website and use the search API to facilitate the search on the website without having your web store to do the heavy lifting there. All right, Laura, how am I doing on timing? Kind of lost track just because we had 5 minute breaks.
We
and
are good.
Sure.
If you want, we could take a couple of questions. If you maybe in like 2 minutes, if you want to take a couple of questions, we have about 10 minutes left. All
right, sounds great. Well, then I'm going to go back to the presentation just because there are yeah. So this is the goodie for you on the way. So if nothing of that what I said made sense, at least the 5 C's you should always keep in mind. Giving your data a health check. Obviously, this is very high level. So there's still a robust data validation necessary, but keeping your data complete, consistent, compliant, current, and clean is the key to success for you as a manufacturer, but also as a reseller. So making the data complete, obviously, if you choose to go into the direction to say, okay, I want to have, I'm going to provide information around the weight, you should make sure that you are providing a weight for every product. So you're not like just having individual SKUs when you said, I got to wait for this part number, so I'm just going to upload it. And then the 999 other products don't have the weight. That's typically bad for your data quality, just because it leaves holes in your data, and your customers or the users of the data then have incomplete data. That also speaks to the consistency, which is a little different because it's more about within data points. So if you have attributes, for instance, and you sell wheels, and you have 3 wheels where you put the diameter, the width, and the bolt pattern, this is the information that you should then also provide for all of the other wheels that you have there, again, to have the ability to make comparisons throughout the data set. And then compliance, data standards such as ACES and PIEs, obviously important for you to comply with if that is the channel that you want to go into. I've mentioned the example around using dimensions to calculate shipping. That could be another way to comply with internal requirements. So therefore, it's again important to understand what do you want to or have to comply with, and then being able to assure that you actually do comply with that. Current, up to date. So if you have a new SKU, that SKU better be in your product data, because obviously if the data is not up to date, if fitment is not up to date, again, the data that is out there that is being used to represent your brand. So if that is not up to date, if that does not have the information necessary, you don't, your data is simply not fulfilling its full purpose. And then cleanliness, that pretty much summarizes all of the above. But I already spoke about the granularity, redundancy, or avoiding redundancy, and keeping it ID based. So keep those 5 C's in mind. They're always very helpful. Happy to answer any questions that there are.
Yep, we have a question here, Johannes, from Ryan. He asked, does PDM have an API for updating or adding data?
Yes, so we have 2 APIs. There is one we call the product API, which is which the main purpose is to submit data from A to B, PDM can be A or B, so you can read and write to the PDM database via the product API, and then the second API is our search API, which is a read-only. That is for the search lookup that I just have presented there. The product API does allow to write and make changes to the PDM data.
Okay, and we have another question from Ken. He asked, what is the level of completeness of ACES and PIEs data as it pertains to the heavy-duty truck industry?
I won't be able to answer that in 5 minutes. Heavy duty is so it's ACES and PIEs. ACES is all the fitment side, so ACES for application, and then PIEs is the product information. And on those levels, AutoCare has done a lot to really push the standard forward to comply with heavy duty. On the ACES side, ACES 4.0, which is, well, it's not I think 4.1 is actually the most recent one, but since 4.0, there is the equipment table was added to the ACES standard, which allows you to provide information not so much driven by a make, model, year combination, and make, model, and heavy duty make, model, year is not so relevant, because you have oftentimes information that revolves more around an engine, like one specific make, model, year of a Freightliner could have different engines, so you have to go more on the engine level for repair parts on heavy duty if it is an engine component, rather than make, model, year. So on the ACES side, a lot has been done by AutoCare to provide the capability to provide proper fitment, and the same on the PIE side. So continuously fields are getting added. So the VMRS code, for instance, is a big one that is being used in heavy duty. It has always been part of PIEs, but in one of the more recent updates, it has always also been added to other segments. I believe interchange or kit was one of the ones where it just recently got added. So I guess to answer your question, ACES and PIEs is very much being used with heavy duty. We have customers that use it for heavy duty. It's heavy duty is a little bit more of the more recent segments that are being like targeted by the ACES and PIE standards. So there are still improvements being done on the way, but it is very much capable and intended to be used for heavy duty, for the heavy duty market. But thanks for the question.
We have a couple more questions, but I think we only have time for one. And somebody asked a question about how PDM integrates with their external ERP system, whether it's Sage or Mass. How does that work?
So this again goes to either the API or integration. So our focus to this date has really been pushing the API and making that as flexible as possible, so you can integrate pretty much into any other system that also communicates via an API. That's obviously not as plug and play as it sometimes would be like to be, but this is where we are now working on some integrations. I don't think Sage, for instance, is on the very top of the list. But again, the API allows flexible enough capabilities to connect. So please reach out to us to explore what are the workflows that you're looking to do, because again, it is very important to be able to manage the data where the origin of the data is. And an ERP system is typically where a new product would get added, and the part number is maintained, and maybe, yeah, again, dimensions and pricing. So again, API currently the main connector for us, and integrations like plugin style integrations are coming over the next course of the year.
All right, we have about 4 minutes, Johannes. One last question I will throw out there from Ryan is similar to the heavy duty, but wanting to know how the integration can work in other categories like power sports or marine industries. How the integration would work in different industries.
Mm-hmm. So. Since this is mostly going towards the fitment and the application side, ACES has multiple, ACES is the final format that you send around, and the tables are where the data is coming from. So the VCDB, the vehicle configuration database, is the table where everything is listed, and that's pretty much that's the truth. Like, that is where if you can't find it in there, AutoCare says it doesn't exist. That's not always true. So then it's up to you to flag that and say, hey, AutoCare, please make a change and make a correction. But the VCDB is pretty much the Bible for fitment. And in the VCDB, you have light duty, you have medium heavy duty, you have power sports, you do have some marine applications. So there are the ones that were mentioned particularly are supported by the VCDB. We are going to release before the end of the year the capability to add custom VCDB. So a custom VCDB will allow you to add any kind of fitment that is not part of the VCDB, which could be either for you to just say, okay, I'm selling components for non-US applications, but in the USA. So if you have, I believe, like some Nissan Skyline vehicles were never officially sold into the USA, so they are import vehicles, therefore they are not natively in the VCDB. Our custom VCDB functionality will allow you to add those vehicles in. It will also allow you to build custom combinations. So if you are somebody, a manufacturer or a reseller selling custom applications, let's just say in the hot rod market, for instance. So you have a specific vehicle and you put an engine into that vehicle that was never intended to be in that vehicle. This is where also the custom VCDB can be used. And then obviously also to build out entirely new segments, either different markets. So if you are selling into regions that are not supported by AutoCare, or if you even selling into industries that are not supported by AutoCare. But this is where the VCDB is continuously growing, and then with the custom VCDB functionality, which works obviously perfectly in conjunction with our search API and the other APIs that we have, this is then the way to really supplement the VCDB as it stands on its own.
Your
Geo popping in.
Your timing is perfect, Johannes.
That was so good, Johannes. Killer presentation, really good information.
Hey guys, this is Brandon from Classy Llama. I'll be presenting for this next session on selecting an e-commerce agency and tips for a successful build. Thanks to PDM for that really interesting demo. And it's always nice to see kind of behind the scenes of solutions like that. So we'll go ahead and jump in here. So switch over to my presentation. All right. So again, I'm Brandon Urich. I'm head of solutions here at Classy Llama. So Classy Llama, we are a full service e-commerce agency. We've been working on the Magento platform for about 14 years now, ever since Magento kind of came into existence. We do a variety of e-commerce services, development, consulting, strategy, design, digital marketing. And we've specialized in the automotive industry for several years now. And we've learned some unique needs in this vertical. And so we wanted to share some of that with you today, and really just generally, any of you who are looking at maybe upgrading your website, overhauling the design of your website, maybe replatforming, or maybe you don't have an e-commerce site at all, and you're transitioning to either a direct-to-consumer site or a B2B site. Those are some of the things that an agency is going to be able to help you with. Some of our clients here, you'll see a mixture of various types of clients, from retailers to industrial to automotive. We've, like I said, kind of specialized in the parts space and equipment type of websites. So like I said, there's some unique needs around that from an e-commerce perspective, we can bring kind of our expertise to. So starting out, we'll talk about what to look for in a systems integrator. So like I said, if you're going into an e-commerce project, integrating with various systems, we're talking to PDM and 3Kit today. There's different ERPs, there's different e-commerce platforms. So what to look for in a systems integrator who's going to kind of help you connect all those dots, and specifically around building the e-commerce website. So some tips, as somebody who is kind of on the ground in the e-commerce world and in projects, talking to clients on a regular basis. Some of the things to look for when you're selecting a systems integrator that are important. One is a broad range of internal subject matter experts. So there are some, agencies that just specialize in development. There are some agencies that just specialize in design and various things. So really making sure that you're looking at what your agency's capabilities are and what that systems integrator specializes in and what type of subject matter experts they have on their team. So technical is one piece of that, and platform specific, somebody who's certified on the platform you're looking at and has experience with that platform obviously is important. Internal user experience. We have several UX designers on staff that specialize in e-commerce. So having, those resources at your disposal to help with the site design. And even if you're working on just a particular feature, maybe a user interface for filtering or navigation or something like that, those user experience specialists are valuable to bring in and consult on those pieces as well. And the same goes for SEO. So there's a lot of SEO considerations when you're doing a website project. You've really got to be mindful of what your current SEO is, what your current equity of your site from a search ranking standpoint is, and how that transitions to whatever, changes you're making, whether it's a completely new environment, new platform, whatnot. There's a lot of things that can break and you can lose SEO equity that you've built. So paying attention to that, having a good strategy, not only of what's there today, but where you're wanting to go is really important. The next thing is project management style alignment. So you'll kind of hear waterfall versus agile as two different project management methodologies. And a lot of times agencies will kind of fall in between there somewhere in terms of a hybrid approach. So we tend to lean more to the agile approach, which is, visibility throughout, showing you progress throughout the project, and being able to flex a little bit and be flexible inside of the project if things come up that maybe business objectives change, or there are details of the project that happen to change based on business needs. Having that ability to be agile and flexible inside the project, but understanding how your SI is approaching the project from a waterfall standpoint, where everything is kind of spelled out in detail ahead of time and it's kind of a fixed scope of work, versus agile, where you have a target timeline and budget with a somewhat flexible scope. The PM tools and reporting that are used also, is a good thing to look into. What tools are available, what type of reports are shared, and what frequency, what do you have access to? Is there real-time reporting on progress and spend and things like that? And how do you interact with the various pieces of work and the team members? And then how is added scope and change orders handled? So this is important when it comes to, in any software project, things are usually going to come up in terms of things where maybe we didn't know all of the details, or maybe the details weren't fully communicated. If things do come up that require a shift in priority, whether it's replacing kind of one feature with another, or in reprioritizing, or whether it's just added scope to what was there, understanding not only how that change order is handled, but just how the communication is handled along the way, so that you want to make sure that there's transparency and visibility if things like that do come up early on, so that it's not a surprise later on. And then that kind of plays into the communication style. So what does day-to-day communication look like? Is there, phone, email, chat? What's kind of the preferred communication formats and the tools available? And what roles do you have access to? Are you strictly talking to a project manager? Is there a solutions architect involved? Is there development roles involved that you're going to be directly communicating with, and kind of the comfort level of your team with the people you have access to on the team? And where are the various resources located? Some agencies have offshore resources, some have onshore. Time zone differences can be pain points if you're just East Coast versus West Coast. So thinking about that and having an understanding of those differences is always helpful. And then vertical, go back a slide here. Vertical experience and alignment. So experience in the similar verticals, when it comes to similar projects. Like I said, Classy Llama has done several parts-based sites, whether it's automotive or other types of sites. And so there's certain things that, we can bring to the table in terms of strategy or best practices, or, just things that we've learned from past projects. And then understanding of the vertical. So automotive specifically, obviously we're talking about things like ACEs and PIs and fitment, and, clean data, and parts visualization. There's these different aspects to an automotive site that maybe don't apply to other types of sites. And so, having people on the team who understand those concepts is important. So the next piece I want to talk through are kind of how we look at the components of a site build. So we talked about how to select an SI. This is kind of how we look at the different components of a site build. So if you're going into a brand new site build, if you're going into a replatform, thinking about these different components of the project and how you need to be kind of making sure that you're paying attention to the different areas. So breaking this down, starting out with discovery and planning, this is where my solutions team that I lead here at Classy Llama has a lot of the heavy lifting around really understanding your business requirements and how those connect to the capabilities of the platform, third-party solutions, and customizations that might need to be done inside of the project. So that includes things like understanding the data architecture. Again, looking at where's your data coming from. If it's coming from a PIM like PDM, where the data is clean and can be piped in, that's always a good way to do things, and it makes things more straightforward and simple. But making sure that we're mapping that to the platform and the platform's capabilities and how it kind of looks at the data. Also, like I mentioned before, an SEO audit and having a strategy and a plan of action there around SEO early on is really important before you get into the build and start maybe making changes to things that could potentially have impacts on your SEO. And then we'll document the requirements. We'll go through and write user stories and acceptance criteria for the various features that we're implementing on the site. We'll set up the development, staging, and production environments for the site so we can, test and evaluate progress as we go, and then have the production environment to push finished work to. And basic configuration just around the e-commerce platforms have a lot of configuration options in them. And so having a, solution specialist who is trained in the platform and understands the different areas of the configuration of the platform and how to apply those to your business is important. The next section here is design and UX. So obviously we'll do design discovery, visual design. We'll use a program like Figma or InVision to actually build mock-ups and share those with the client to get feedback. And then once those are approved, it'll go to front-end development, and then we'll do design QA and functional QA to make sure that the designs that have been implemented are actually accurate to what was in the original mock-ups, and also that they're responsive, that they work well on various screen sizes. And we've tested on multiple browsers and at multiple sizes to make sure that everything's functioning properly. And then custom features. So again, on some projects, there may not be a lot of custom work. It may be, using native platform functionality and using third-party solutions. But there are sometimes a need for custom features. Obviously, Magento as a platform is more customizable than a lot of platforms out there in terms of its kind of built to be customized, and there's a intentional way that it is to be customized. And so knowing how to apply that to your business requirements is really important. So we'll do a platform functionality gap analysis. So basically just identifying, okay, here are your business requirements. Here's what is capable out of the box with the platform. And then, where are the needs there in terms of custom functionality. We'll evaluate third-party solutions, so extensions, apps, plugins, things that attach to the website that are kind of already pre-built solutions, similar to like a 3-kit solutions, which we'll hear from soon, that can be integrated with the e-commerce platform to provide enhanced functionality. And then we'll write functional requirements. Those will be approved by the merchant. We'll go through development and the development cycles, and then functional QA again on any custom work. The next section is integrations. So while many of you probably are running an ERP or a PIM or various systems, maybe warehouse management system, there's need for integrations. And so understanding the systems will kind of map out what all systems are there. We'll then map the data that needs to be connected together between the systems. And selecting a middleware solution is an important piece of that. So in some cases, these solutions will have an off-the-shelf integration with your e-commerce platform. So that's something to look into. In other cases, you may use an off-the-shelf connector or an integration platform to connect the two systems together. And in other cases, we might need to do custom development where we're building a custom middleware to connect via API or various mechanisms to pipe the data where it needs to go. And again, going through that implementation and testing process with your integrations. And finally, we come to launch prep. So this includes planning the launch cutover, things like making sure we have a plan for your DNS records and what changes need to be made there, doing end-to-end testing, and again, QAing and doing any bug fixes as a final pass. And then again, before launch, that final SEO audit. We do that at the beginning as well at the end of the project so that we're setting expectations, uncovering, what we need to know and creating a strategy at the beginning. And then at the end, we're kind of auditing that, making sure that did we actually follow that plan? Are there any things that came up that we needed to make a shift on? And do we have all the pieces in place so that when we go live, we're not going to potentially break anything when it comes to SEO? So that's kind of the different components of how we would look at a site build project and some things to be considering if you're going into a site build project. The next piece is avoiding technical debt. So with any, technology project, there's the opportunity to, make decisions along the way that are either good long-term scalable solutions or potentially solutions that could create technical debt for you later on. So some tips around that, and again, with a platform like Magento that's flexible, selecting a good systems integrator that has experience with the platform is important so that you make sure that they are following best practices and making good recommendations on how to do things so that you're not potentially doing something that's going to cause problems other places later on. But planning and designing with the platform in mind is always important. So really understanding the platform's capabilities, how it's intended to be used, and planning around that very intentionally, especially if you're doing custom work. And then good data information architecture. So again, that message of clean data is always best practice to get that data that's coming in right, and you're going to make everybody's life easier long term. But information architecture, just really understanding like, how are my products categorized? How are they merchandised? What makes sense from a user experience standpoint when it comes to how we're setting up the products on the website, and then how that maps to the platform functionality, whether it's product attributes or specs, or the product type. Is it a configurable type product? Is it like a bundle or a kit type product? And understanding, how all that data needs to pipe into the system to work with those various product types. And then native functionality is kind of how we look at things first, followed by third-party products or solutions, and then finally custom solutions. So we want to look at understanding native functionality and what the gaps are, if any. Then we'll look at, are there any existing solutions out there that cover this functionality, that provide the needed additional functionality that the site doesn't natively have. And if there's not any suitable solution out there that we agree on solves for what we need, going to a custom solution and having, that scoped out and built. So that's kind of the flow of how we would look at solving a particular business problem. And then good documentation. So this is really important when it comes to avoiding technical debt, because you may have people on your team that switch out over time. You may have different team members at an agency that change out over time. And that documentation can live on, for reference. And so making sure that the team that's working on your site is providing good documentation and you have access to that is really important, something that you can save and keep for reference long-term. Fluid communication is also really important because as you're going through the project and making changes, we want to be showing you what we're doing, getting feedback, and making sure everybody's on the same page that what we're doing is actually solving what we're intending to accomplish. Catching things early is always better than catching them when they're already done being built or late in the project. And then ongoing testing is very important. Having a QA team who is checking work, testing against acceptance criteria, and then you as the merchant also testing as things are being built is going to help surface any potential issues early on, and again allow us to course correct if necessary. And finally here, SEO considerations. So there's, again, I touched on this a couple places, but I wanted to specifically talk through SEO because it's becoming more and more important. We all know SEO is important, but what I've found is as people have gotten to a certain point in their business, again, there's that SEO kind of equity that exists, whether you've had an SEO strategy up to this point or not, there's some type of SEO that's probably impacting your business at this point, unless you're just completely not online or you're like B2B only where it's like behind a login or something. But even if that's the case, moving forward, you want to have an SEO strategy so that you kind of know, what to focus on, since SEO is important. So search engine optimization, understanding the SEO value of existing pages. So what we'll do is we'll go through Google Analytics or whatever analytics platform you're using. We will review what pages, product pages, category pages, different types of pages across the site that are driving traffic, and make sure that we understand those patterns so that we can understand what pages do we want to make sure aren't impacted in a negative way if we are deciding to make changes to navigation or category structures. There are things like that. And then planning your URL structure so that ideally when you do a site transition, you're keeping your URLs consistent. A lot of times making changes like that during a replatform increases the risk of losing that link equity across your site. And if you do that across an entire site when you replatform, you could have a pretty significant hit to your SEO equity that you've built up across various different pages. So planning that URL structure, making sure that we can either keep it consistent or we have a very intentional plan for what changes we're making, and not just relying on chance or how the platform kind of natively structures your URLs to handle that. And then impact of new features on existing organic traffic. So again, if we're making changes to a big one that I've seen with automotive specifically is implementing like a year, make, model lookup. There are ways to do that work well with SEO, and there are ways to do that don't work well with SEO. There are some customers who we've helped who have come from a certain world where maybe all of their fitment data is structured one way. Maybe it's in product categories or product attributes or something, and switching to a different mechanism for searching that could impact your SEO. So rather than just making a blanket change across the board, we might want to put a strategy in place for over time evolving the way that your site is navigated or the way that your product data is structured on the site. So again, back to that SEO audit and strategy early on, and the data information architecture early on, really getting that nailed down so that we have a plan that's holistic. And then your category and page taxonomy, again, along the same lines. If you're making sweeping changes to the way your content pages are structured or where they're located, or the content that's on those, you could have widespread impacts if those pages are already driving traffic. 301 redirects are usually necessary. There's usually at least some pages that are changing URLs. Again, we want to be very intentional about what pages we 301 redirect, as even doing 301 redirects can have an impact on SEO. So just having a clear plan, making sure that we are redirecting pages that are changing, but having a strategy around that. And then I wanted to provide this resource here. So we did a white paper. Our lead e-commerce strategist here at Classy Llama did a white paper on an SEO guide to website redesigns. So that is available on our website, and to go download that if you have more questions or want more information on SEO when it comes to redesigning your website. So that is the conclusion of my content for today. So I want to switch over to Q&A here.
Hey, Brandon, back on.
Yeah, and I think, Gio, are you going to run questions for me?
Yep.
Cool.
So yeah, at this time, we'll go ahead and do the questions. So if you guys would like to submit any questions right now, we'll take the next few minutes to go ahead and answer those. Let me go ahead and clear some of these pop-ups real quick. Let's see. So right now we'll take about the next 10 minutes to ask any questions you might have about your next project, maybe any obstacles that you've seen. And we'll go ahead and Brandon can answer those right now.
I think one question was just clarification on the terms like systems integrator versus agency. And basically that would be, from our perspective, your web development agency would be another term for that. So we are an agency commonly referred to as a systems integrator because what we're doing is working on integrating different systems with the e-commerce site. So obviously your e-commerce site is the kind of the face of your brand to your customers, and that has to integrate with various systems. So that's kind of where the e-commerce agency or a systems integrator comes into play, is kind of helping architect things from a user experience standpoint, and then how everything kind of integrates to the website from there.
Brandon, can you speak towards the type of like automotive specific features Classy Llama has built on platforms like Magento?
Yeah, so there's a few key ones. So there's we've done parts visualization before, where maybe we're showing a schematic with parts like on kind of superimposed over a schematic that you can click on. So we've done things like that. We've also done several sites with vehicle fitment, and we've actually built a Magento extension that provides vehicle fitment functionality inside Magento. We've done things like VIN lookup, where it's decoding the VIN number to identify what vehicle you're searching for. And then along the lines of the fitment, we've also done like a My Garage feature, which again is part of our fitment extension that allows a customer to actually save what vehicle they're shopping for in their customer profile. So yeah, those are a few examples. You know, outside of that, several different kind of custom integrations with various data sources would be another common thing that we've done.
On those features, so you talked about like the diagram search, you talked about fitment search. Where does that data come from typically? Is that something that the merchant provides?
Yeah, again, it varies. Using a clean data source like a PDM, or you know, it depends on the merchant and what they're using. Sometimes data might be coming from an ERP. Sometimes it might be coming from another service or from a PIM. So that can vary. There's a varying level of degree of work required to get the data into the right formats when it comes to which type of source it's coming from. Obviously, using a PIM that kind of cleans up the data and gets it in a very structured format is always going to help make that a more smooth integration.
Gotcha. Now, in terms of Magento, are there any limitations to the type of data that can be fed into a platform like Magento?
Well, with something like Magento, I mean, there's a native API which you can pipe data into. Fitment data isn't a native concept to an e-commerce platform. I don't know of any e-commerce platforms that have that concept built in automatically. So that's usually where there's either some custom work involved or using a plugin or extension to store that data in the proper way in the platform would be required. But you know, with a platform like Magento, you can pretty much, you know, put data in from any source. It's just a matter of making sure that you have a plan for how that data is going to be used and, you know, how it's going to be transported.
In your opinion, how long or how much does having, I guess, I don't want to say dirty data, but maybe data that's not quite up to par or data that's not as organized and consistent along the board, how much does that affect the timeline of a project? Having a, you know, maybe sort that out, and how much does it affect things like the cost of a project as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some cases where we've got into scoping a website build and we've actually gone back to the merchant and said, you really need to go get your data in the right structure first. This can happen, you know, if, you know, we'll see like catalog companies that maybe have their data kind of more formatted for catalog use, but not necessarily for digital use. And so there's some cleanup work that has to be done. That can entail manual efforts. Then that can also be somewhat automated with various tools that are out there. So it depends on kind of where you're at. It can have a significant impact. I mean, data migration or data integration, you know, can be a pretty big chunk of a project's budget. So having a clear plan on how that's going to be handled is important early on. Making the right decisions on you know what needs to be handled where, and what solutions need to be in place to make sure that it's handled properly.
Gotcha. We have a question from Rob Shapiro. He says, how do you handle 301 redirects when we're moving from Woocommerce to Magento and changing some category structure? What's the difference between rewrites and redirects, pros and cons?
Yeah, good question. So there's the ability to import 301 redirects. So the first thing is figuring out what URLs are changing. You know, different e-commerce platforms will have a specific way that they structure the URLs. For example, you might have categories nested inside of your URLs, or you might have year, make, and model in your URLs. There's different ways that you might be generating your URLs today. If that's going to change at all, at minimum, you want to do a 301 redirect to redirect from the old URL to the new URL for any links that are out there on the web. And that'll also help carry over some of that link equity. Now, doing a 301 redirect across pages that are changing significantly, you're not actually guaranteed to bring over that link equity according to Google. And so you can do a 301 redirect and still lose your ranking for that page. So that's where you want to have a good strategy going into this. So in terms of kind of the mechanics of how it would work though, you would basically identify any URLs that are changing, generate like a spreadsheet of those and import them in. Or, if we need to like script something that if you have thousands of URLs that are changing, we could write kind of a custom script to basically map your old URLs to your new URLs and create 301 redirects in the new platform. In Magento, that can be done with some development effort, or they can be imported relatively easily. The difference between rewrites and redirects. So in Magento, rewrites are kind of behind the scenes. So you have your like normal internal URL that Magento uses, and a rewrite would be kind of a vanity URL, like the URL that the user actually sees on their browser. So that's kind of a behind the scenes rewrite that can be done. And then a redirect is actually redirecting the traffic from one old URL to a new URL, so that if customers have like a link bookmarked, or if that particular URL is ranking in searches, that user's getting redirected to the new page. So pros and cons on that. They're really kind of two different things. 301 redirects are a permanent redirect. It's basically telling the search engine that this is a permanent redirect to the new page. And over time, the search engine will deprioritize the old URL and start to prioritize the new URL. And that will allow your SEO on those pages to transition to the new URLs. Rewrites, like I said, those are more kind of a functional thing behind the scenes that might be needed for various more technical reasons. And they're used inside the platform for various reasons. But so really 301 redirects are kind of your primary thing that you need to look at when it comes to SEO strategy.
Brandon, so you mentioned the difference between like a waterfall project management style and agile. And one thing that I wanted to kind of maybe have you clarify is the role of the merchant in a build, right? Because I think there's this, I think sometimes there's a misconception that, okay, you hire the agency, you do discovery, you hand them everything over, and you're good. We'll see you in 3 months. We'll get a brand new website done. But can you kind of speak through the steps of the build in which the merchant really needs to be engaged? What engagement level do they have to have throughout the build?
Yeah. So, for us, we're going to do our due diligence on the front end to understand the business objectives first and foremost, and then develop a scope of work that we can agree on between the merchant and us, and how we're going to accomplish that scope of work. So that's going to be, informed from several kind of discovery meetings early on, where we're talking through the different components of the site build and what the requirements are. However, there can be things that come up, say, for example, SEO is a good example of if we identify something during the build that might have an impact that maybe was kind of unforeseen early, in the discovery, we might need to pivot a little bit and maybe approach something a different way. And so just having that open communication and open dialogue about like, hey, we discovered this, here's the potential impact. And, it goes back to why having an agency that has good experience in the vertical and on the platform is important, because we're going to be more aware of what those potential concerns are, and we're going to kind of bake those into our estimates early on so that we have more visibility into, you know, what all the potential shifts or, you know, where the risk points are at and communicating about those. But throughout the project, you know, we're going to kind of have checkpoints where we're doing that SEO audit, we're doing that kind of requirements gathering and, you know, data analysis and design and things like that. And so having checkpoints along the way where we're showing how we're planning on approaching something, what we're planning on doing, and then as we're building things, also showing those how they're working, what our progress is. That's the way that we operate, and we find provides the best success on a project, is just really good transparency along the way, so that everybody's on the same page and knows what's going on throughout the project. Some projects are pretty cut and dry, and it's, you know, stand up the site, import the data, integrate with these couple of sources, and you know, it's pretty straightforward. Other projects might have customizations, or you might have a complex, you know, SEO strategy or merchandising strategy where we need to build custom features. And so, you know, the more kind of new stuff that you introduce to a project, the more kind of risk there is, really. So we usually advocate for, you know, figuring out what that minimum viable project is, what's MVP for that initial site launch, and let's get there, and then let's help you iterate over time and kind of build a relationship on improving your site long term. So that's really our preferred approach.
To dig a little bit deeper on that, can you talk a little bit more about like the type of like manpower or resources that the merchant will need to provide towards this project, and what their involvement will be along the way?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things is when it comes to having good product data is having good content. So a lot of what drives good site design is imagery and content, whether that's copy or various forms of content, video. So that's something to consider early on. And again, we're going to kind of make those recommendations on, you know, hey, if you want this type of a site, this is what is going to be needed to be generated. And so figuring out that plan for, you know, how are we going to generate the right kind of content? Does that mean there needs to be people internally who are working on generating like new product descriptions or copy for various things, or do new images need to be taken? Can we source data from the manufacturers? Is that enough? Do we want to provide our own unique content to enhance that? So that's a big area, is thinking through what's going to be needed and who's going to handle generating the content that's necessary to really get you where you want to go. And then in doing the, if we're migrating data from one system to another, just having, you know, we'll kind of figure out who's going to do what in that, in terms of prepping the data and getting it ready for integration or import into the new site. That some of that can be done by the merchant. And if you have a team that is capable of doing that, then, you know, there's certain things we can give to the merchant, and there's other things that we can do. And then, you know, if there's any type of integrations with like an ERP or something, do we have the appropriate resources internally or within maybe the ERP vendor or ERP implementer to work with them on coordinating how the data needs to sync between the two systems and things like that. So those are kind of the biggest areas around content, data migration, and then integrations. Having, you know, oversight and the right people involved from that standpoint is always important.
Are there opportunities, or should there be opportunities, I guess I would say, along the way for the merchant to test what's going on? So because obviously, I mean, when the day comes to launch the site, you don't really want that to be the first time you've seen everything or even worked with the site, right? Can you speak towards the opportunities and training that exist, prior to launching, and why the merchant should take advantage of maybe being involved even through to the end, even just before the launch?
Yeah, it's never a good idea to kind of expect like the whole plan to be made out in advance, and then your development team kind of goes into a cave until they're done, and then they come out and they're like, "Here you go, here's your site." That usually doesn't work, and so having tight communication throughout the process, getting on screen shares and kind of walking through like, well, here's how the platform natively works. Here's kind of how we're thinking on maybe extending this functionality, or we're thinking about using this third-party solution. Let's bring this provider in and get a demo of their product. Just again, just collaboration and visibility. And, we look at it as we're your partner in this project. And so we're going to communicate on what we're finding, what we're seeing, what our recommendations are along the way. And that's really, the best way to handle staying on the same page with how things are being approached.
Nice one. Thank you, Gio. And gosh, what interesting stuff we just heard from the Classy Llama team and PDM. Super valuable things. We're excited to be here. Guys, today we're talking digital content, 3D, and virtual photography strategies for auto parts makers. So look, my name is Mark. I head up marketing at 3Kit. 3Kit is a company that lets other companies, auto parts companies in this case, show their product in 3D, interactive 3D, and virtual photography. This lets you basically let shoppers, let jobbers, DIYers, and other folks who want to buy your product see if your products fit together and how they look and how they interact. I'm joined by Matt Seeger. He's our VP of Solution Engineering. He's the guy that can answer all your tough questions about the technical ins and outs of how this works. And also, we're going to show you a lot of demos about how companies are using this today. So what we're going to do, I'm going to spend about 15 or 20 minutes talking about what we're seeing in the auto parts landscape, what auto companies are doing in terms of visuals and problems that we're seeing and how to fix those problems. And then Matt will spend a majority of the time, honestly, just diving in and showing you guys what these demos look like. So I'm going to jump right in. I hope you guys are excited. The music got me pumped up, so I'm excited too. Let's do it. So listen, here's a little bit about our company. We started in 2005. Our founder was actually at first a designer for Hollywood movies like you see here, Iron Man, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter series. And the reason this is relevant is basically this takes the most intricate and highly detailed design for 3D. And that's what he was doing for a long, long time until about 2016. And essentially this sort of technology that he had built for Hollywood to better render 3D in those movies was now moving into e-commerce. So if you guys have ever noticed now, your Chrome browser or Firefox allows you to see products in 3D really easily. That came in at about 2016. It's a web interface called WebGL. And so Ben, our founder, went from helping out mostly and focusing on Hollywood to now focusing on e-commerce and letting companies like you show their product in a more interactive way than just photography. Over the last 2 years, we've raised $30 million. We have a lot of confidence that the future is all about providing a better visual customer experience. That's what we bet people like Matt, people like myself, I've bet my livelihood on this, that people will buy in the future. They will buy from you because you show them a very exact and interactive version of your product. The stats don't lie. This is why we're bullish about what we're building here, why you should really be considering the product visuals that you show. People who use augmented reality are 11 times more likely to purchase your product. In 2016, people expected to see 3 pictures of your product. In 2019, they expect to see 8 pictures of your product. Guys, if you're listening, that means in 2025, if you look at this growth, people are going to expect not 3, not 8. They're going to expect like 15 images of every single variation of your product, every color, every potential year, every model. And so where you're facing is everyone wants a better visual, but how do you go about creating that? And that's what 3Kit is here for. We did some research, and you can see here, this is sort of a GIF of a cooling system, and you can see that you're kind of rotating it there, and you're able to select various parts. Whether it's a DIY person or someone who works in a garage or anyone really, they're able to pick apart and really see what's happening. And guys, the reason this is important is 60% of the purchasing steps when someone's wants to purchase something, it happens online. And so if you're not providing that experience where someone can be totally sure about what they're selecting, the make and the model of what they're selecting, you're going to be in trouble, because people nowadays, they don't necessarily want to call. They don't want to talk to your salesperson necessarily. Some older school people might like that, but many people today are going to want to do most of their buying steps for auto parts and autos. They're going to want to do this online. They're doing this also, of course, on their mobile device, on their phone or their iPad. And they're going to move across. They're going to look at their phone first. And so they need that really clear visual experience first on their phone. Then they might move to a better look on their computer where they want to rotate it and really look at your product. And then last is the shoppers of today want really clear product and pricing transparency. You know, even before COVID, people did not want to go and return a big or small piece of your product because it was the wrong thing, because they misordered it. That is a huge inconvenience. And now with COVID, going to the post office has this whole new problem to it. It's like all of a sudden you're heading to the post office to return this thing, which is already a bad experience. And now you're kind of putting your family at risk in its own way. So really, really, more than ever, you've got to focus, if you're an auto parts maker, you've got to focus on enabling that online experience, the visual experience to select those parts, as you can see here, and recognize that people are doing this from their phone, their tablet, and their desktop, and wanting to talk to your salespeople, but those things are all tied together. They're not separate. And then, give people that product and pricing transparency that they need to make the decision, and so that they won't have to return it. We've got experience, 3Kit as a company in and around vehicles. C-Tech, they make, large aluminum carts. I hope you guys know them. They're in a lot of garages. So customizable carts and cabinets for tools. Lippert Components, they make components for RVs. And then of course, Milwaukee Tools. All of these are companies that use 3Kit to customize every single portion of their product. So if, we'll go into a few examples that'll be a little bit better, but we have a deep and growing experience in and around vehicles. So, hopefully you guys are, answered some of those survey questions, but, I just wanted to, like, if any of y'all, if you take a look here, I wish I could have asked you if we were in a classroom, my wife's a teacher, and I guess we could ask, like, do any of you experience any of these problems, any of these challenges with the auto parts and visuals? So quality, you might have a picture of a spoiler, let's say, but how can the shopper be sure of what makes and models of cars this exact spoiler goes on? Like, are they able to place on the car? Are they able to see, like, does this part go in this part? These two parts fit together? That's a really tough challenge. And if you're not solving that visually, then you're leaving the customer to basically kind of make a bet, and you don't want that. Another problem we've heard in the auto parts industry is, particularly with sort of offshore companies, taking your images, and just sort of copying your images and say, hey, we make this part, when really you make the part, but they are stealing your images. That's going to be a lot harder to do when you're showing your product in interactive 3D, nearly impossible. And then also another part about quality is like standardizing your quality. If one of your parts is photographed with a white background, another part's in a gray background, all of a sudden you're going to have this brand problem where people are like, why does that part on a white screen, that's on black, and this one's in the storeroom and this one's in the office? You want to show a really clear brand, sort of image of all your parts. When it comes to operations, look, if you have a big or heavy product, all of a sudden you're shipping these big heavy products to a photo warehouse. This is going to be even harder during COVID-19 and social distancing. Look, it's not easy getting every single part photographed, and we recognize that. With 3Kit, you don't have to take any physical photographs at all. We use either 3D objects, or we use CAD, or we use any sort of design file that you have for your product. And then finally, just look at the cost. If you're taking photos of your product right now, if you're using a professional photographer, you're looking at $25 to $50 per finished photo of your product. With 3Kit, it's about 3 cents per product with our virtual photographer. You can also get a photo for every scene, every variation, and there's just a massive cost savings here to use what 3Kit generates. So this is what we do. 3Kit, as a company, we essentially offer 3 products: a 3D configurator, which sort of lets you rotate objects and customize them. You can see on that tire on the left, I believe that's a Hyundai tire, 16-inch rim. You select the product, the person or you are able to engage, you're able to zoom in, you're able to click around, change the colors, change the treads, really drive that confidence. Augmented reality, which allows you to customize the product and then place it in your actual garage, or you can see here in your driveway. It's a small driveway here in Chicago, but Again, that's driving that extra confidence for that person. And again, this is almost no extra cost from a 3-kit perspective. And then finally, virtual photographer, it turns a single design file into hundreds of thousands of photorealistic images and infinite combinations. So imagine here, we've got this is a very basic example of a Honda. It's got 12 different colors, 8 different wheel styles. And that's just the very, very beginning. Matt will show you a little bit more. So why do customers use us? First and foremost, when it comes to ROI, return on investment, companies use us because when you have a great visual experience, it means you have a better visual customer experience. Better visuals means better customer experience. We all spend our days on, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok. Those are visual environments. And when you provide a good visual environment, you provide a better customer experience. We've seen customers have a 40% increase in conversion rates, a 80% fewer returns, because when you know exactly how that product fits with another product and you can see it and you can zoom in and you know exactly about, is that a matte finish or is it a chrome finish? You can really, really zoom in and see every single element of your product. People are a lot more confident, both when they buy and then when they get it, there's less negative surprises. So we see tremendous ROI for customers. I'm happy to dive into any of these, but it's all about providing a better customer experience, and visuals are the route to do that. So, like I said, I ran real fast through it. But I kind of wanted to turn it over to Matt and to show, a number of demos to help us better understand. Matt, do you want to take over?
Yep, perfect. I was just waiting for you to end your share, Mark. Thank you.
Sorry, my bad.
Not a problem. So yeah, as Mark said, we're going to walk you through a few different examples. And I think the fundamental thing I'd like to start with is just like, why do we look at 3D and how do we put these configurators on here and kind of work our way up to a more complex example, a couple live examples, and show you some of what we see as being the future of how people are going to buy and interact with products online. So at its fundamental core, interacting with this 3D technology on the web looks something like this. You're going to be able to not be limited by just what the images and angles of the items that you have are here. So this is kind of one component of a car, simply a tire, but we allow this experience to then be changed and reflected in real time based on a handful of user inputs. So you might have called these in the past configurators or variant products, but as we make changes to these items, I, as a user on the site, can see in real time what the changes are going to look like on this item. So as I switch through this wheel and tire combination here, I'm able to see what this particular type of wheel is going to look like. And I'm not limited to just the images that the producer has decided to put onto their store. I can zoom in as far as I'd like, check it out from any angle, any level of detail. That's really up for you to decide. I had seen a question already come through the chat, which was, do we just drop in our CAD files and share all that design information? And the answer is really, it's up to you. Whatever level of detail is necessary to share with the users online is really going to be where you're going to end. So if it's a very deep design file on how you're going to assemble something with like each individual screw, that could be a great starting point. More likely is that we're going to have a stripped down version of a CAD that removes internals that aren't important to whatever the user is viewing. But this is the fundamental 3D experience that someone's going to be working with online. And as we kind of build upon this very basic scenario, what we'll see here is something more like this, introducing the concept of personalization or customization into the process. I remember like when I saw Fast and the Furious the first time, I didn't want to go fast. I actually just wanted my car to be like the most unique one in my school parking lot. And this is kind of what that configuration experience allows us to do. In real time, I'm able to look through every single option of these custom chairs that I can put in here, everything from kind of a classic design to a low back to something much more, sophisticated that might take a 5-point right here, moving through all of the different components that really would make this chair mine, everything to the fine details of the stitching. So let me maybe zoom in on an area here where you'll be able to see the stitching along the edge here change from a blue to red, maybe something that is fully kind of going in with the rest of it and make it that black. but every fine detail of something that can be configured can be presented to your user in real time. It allows you to cut the corner of having to manufacture every single thing along the way to snap a photograph of it. And you're able to give your buyer the confidence that what it is that they're building is going to be really what they receive. If you've ever ordered a custom t-shirt or something online, you might be familiar with the proofing concept where they send you an email and be like, is this what you want? And you go back and forth, back and forth. You skip all that buyer-seller interaction in the complex part and help them jump directly to sales. So I'll continue to walk through this chair and maybe configure it. Even some more interesting combinations can be made available here, such as the houndstooth colors that can be added into the middle of the chair, different types of materials as well, the more performance or mesh area types of fabrics as well. So all the fine details of what that fabric looks like allows me as a buyer to experience what this product looks like without ever needing to go into a showroom to purchase this. And it makes me more confident in what it is that I'm buying. Just kind of give this chair a full spin to let you know what we're working with here. It's not fully just from one angle or the few that I've been working with. It's a completely interactive model of what this item is going to look like. Another way we've seen 3D really changing the way people interact with products online is giving them the tour of the product in a way that you might have traditionally had to go into a showroom and have an associate walk you through all the fine details of that. Well, you can capture their best practices and put that directly in the hands of every single person who's experienced your product online. So not exactly an auto part here, although you might have one of these in your car if you don't have a USB charger. And I'm able to explore all the different parts of this product by spinning it around, seeing all the different parts of it, and getting additional information on product hotspots that are relevant to the user. And you can also animate these things to have people get a better sense of how these things work, whether it's what does the interior of this look like for the real gearhead, or just what are the components going to look like as they animate, how do they work within a certain product. So basic interaction with a 3D item, letting somebody see something in a way that's not reliant on an image existing prior, to the real fine tuning of a configured product. How do I take it from an off-the-shelf thing to personalizing it and making it mine? And then taking what used to require an in-store experience and dropping that into your online experience so people can really learn about your products online without needing an expensive resource like an in-store associate to do these things. And when we think about,
you can see how valuable that would be if, especially during COVID, and you have even a somewhat complex product, or you have a product that has something really special about it. You need to call out that special part of your product, and kind of these signs, these annotations are a way for you to specifically call to the customer, hey, click on this. We want to show you why this part is shaped like this. It will make you go faster or more efficient. And you really want to call that out inside the visual, not just in some copy over there on the right, some writing. No one reads the writing. Look at this part of the product, and that calls it out in a really special way.
Yeah, copy actually marks one thing that I think is pretty difficult to read and kind of digest, especially in the world where we see what we want and move quickly. I think the most obvious example of that is actually right here in buying an aftermarket part. So if you wanted to go into a store, you may have to pull up the actual catalog that exists on the, that's stuck on that chain, and look up an exact part and determine fitment. The fitment catalogs and databases are all pretty comprehensive, and where we see this going is actually the shoppable diagram. So not requiring me to flip through a catalog, whether it's paper or digital online, but also being able to interact with that item online so I can more quickly and confidently move through the purchase of buying something online, the process of buying something. So this cooling system, for instance, I may not know what this item was called or how to look it up in a book, but I do know this is the vehicle I own and this is the part that seems to be broken in my vehicle. I can select that and have it interact with the rest of my e-commerce experience and inform me of what part that is. And it also, again, back to that concept of confidence, I may know that I'm looking for the bypass hose, and as I see it highlighted in the interactive shoppable diagram, I am more confident that that is in fact the item that I want to see. So as we think about what we used to do with kind of exploded parts diagrams or line drawings. We can take this to the a more enhanced visual experience as well, to something that looks more like the real products that I'm interacting with, and truly allowing kind of a two-way interaction between the e-commerce site and the parts that would be in there to allow the user to more seamlessly move through that. So maybe switch to another system here, look at the exhaust system and say, it's the left header that I needed to replace, without needing to look up any SKU, without needing to look up any other part of fitment. I'm able to select the item directly from a diagram, or directly from the list of the parts that make that system up, and move along through my experience. And when we want to see this kind of collectively in a full e-commerce experience where it allows somebody to actually make a purchase, I've simplified it down to something that's more go-kart-like, a lawnmower with a very powerful engine on it. But as you explode these parts out here, it may be kind of summer maintenance. I don't know exactly which air filter it is that comes along on my this particular model that I bought, but I can simply select that item. This site, Magento in this case, happens to know what that item is that I selected. So the visual that I can interact with as a user, informing the e-commerce site of what part that I should be working with, simply add that to my cart. I don't know what blades these are either. I don't need to take them off to look at it. I simply know that this is the item I purchased. That's the item I want. It's now informed the e-commerce site of what it is that I'm trying to buy. And I've now added 2 items to my cart without ever having to look through a catalog of all the different items that are on there. As a user, I'm able to move quickly, more confidently through that experience.
And think about all of the folks out there who are, literally under the hood of the car, or, in the shop looking at, and they know the make and the model, and they're just able to push this button and see that product all of a sudden broken out into all the pieces, and literally just point their finger and click that thing that they know is broken, hit the add to cart and check out immediately. And being able to do that on your site, it literally takes them, from, it would have taken them probably 45 minutes to find you and get this all done. But now all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that's that site where I can, explode the parts, know exactly which part is broken, select it, and check out immediately. If you want to talk about a competitive advantage and a unique customer experience, this is that.
Walk through a few additional examples here. This is kind of a fully assembled card, something we've seen probably online for quite a while now, as you kind of look to buy your new vehicle and what's going to go into that. But many of these images are actually baselined from underlying 3D files that allow for all of the permutations to be generated without the need to actually manufacture each thing in every permutation. So there's actually a question in chat that says, we sell 2 bumpers that are somewhat similar. One, I think it was perforated or with holes, and one without. You can actually create lifelike imagery of items that you don't need to manufacture in the real world to get lifelike imagery of them. So this is a very simple configurator here. In fact, we've only got 2 different options that you can pick through, 3 different wheels, I think 8 or so different colors, and 24 different positions that you can view the vehicle from. But this vehicle never had to be manufactured. The photographer never had to be hired. It never had to be staged. So when you take 3D and look at it from just a single image and lock that down, you result in 2D imagery that allows you to cover a really, really vast catalog with the minimal amount of inputs to get a full kind of visual experience of a product without the 3D interaction piece, but very lifelike 2D imagery created without the traditional photography process. This is something 3K calls virtual photography. And I'll bring you to an example now in the wild of a customer of ours, CTech, that creates garage storage and cabinet configurations. And this allows for, I guess at the end of the day, it's a fully bespoke cabinet that comes in, I'm going to say, technically an infinite amount of combinations when you take into account all of their different sizing options. So this is a three-piece cabinet here. It's actually not, it's a single piece, but 3 different opening areas. And I'm able to modify all the dimensions of this and see what this will look like in real time as I make those changes. So I've just added 8 inches of width to the overall cabinet. The system has allocated that width accordingly to all of the different areas on here. I'll leave the depth alone here and move to the more interesting option. So I can start doing the things like picking my color that's going to match the rest of the storage within my garage. So move along through a few different here so you can just see how quickly and nicely this is for me as a user to interact with. As I spin the back, you can actually see that this is all open as if it's going to be mounted and installed against a wall. And that's where the options can start coming in. So I can actually add a quick back panel to that, ensuring that I know what I'm getting. I might want to put this into like an island setup with back-to-back cabinets and include the back panel there. Now as a user and a buyer of this thing, I know that that's how it's going to come. And maybe it will be an island. So let's add a left and right edge to this thing so it can sit in the middle and look really nice. Little bumpers on both ends there. And then again, we get this interaction piece so the user can be sure of what they're getting. So I can see my 2 doors, I should say, would open in the center and on the left. And I have 1 shelf of storage in each one here, but I can further customize and configure this to my specific needs. So I might say on the left, I want to do 3 shelves. I want those drawers to actually be in the middle. And over on the right-hand side, we'll make that right-hand opening. And we don't need 3 shelves in there. We're actually going to be keeping smaller components in there. And I'll add 5 shelves into the right-hand side of that. I can open it to make sure that the configuration of this is precisely what I want. And a lot of the other things are happening that might be a little more difficult to do today, such as updating the price in real time. Every time I make a very little change to the configuration, as a user, I'm informed right away of what the change to the price is going to be, as well as any of the specifications that now make up my overall custom configured cabinet. And the final thing I'll show you, and I'm going to do this with a piece of luggage just because this full cabinet's not going to fit in my office here, but every single one of these items that we've been looking to buy online, there's a huge gap that people still have, which is how do I really know this is going to fit or look correct in my space? Well, as Mark said, the augmented reality experience comes kind of along with the package when you're talking to 3Kit. So you can include these view in your space buttons, and I'm actually going to stop sharing my computer screen, try to share my phone camera with you guys in real time. And we're going to drop this exact piece of luggage into my office. So you should be looking at my phone. Can switch over to my camera. I'll point this over at the QR code on my screen. And now as a user, I've passed that experience directly from my desktop computer to my phone. As I scroll down here, you'll see 3Kit is reloading, and it is going to launch an augmented reality experience, which takes that item and allows it to be placed directly in my space. So again, the luggage was small enough to fit on my floor, but this could be anything that you could be building online in 3D. So if I had a big enough garage that can house that C-Tech cabinet, I'd be able to drop that in there to make sure I like the fitment of that in there. I like the color that's going to match the surrounding area. And all of this was done directly from within the browser. There was no need to ask a user to install a custom application to do anything in augmented reality. So whether you're using Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce, anything out there, it's all browser native, not requiring an additional step from the users. So hope you guys have enjoyed those demos, and it looks like it's brought some questions into the chat here. Did we want to handle those one at a time here, or did somebody want to moderate them, or should we just roll through them?
Let's see. We've got yeah. Let's roll into them. Are you building the diagrams, or are you? So this is from Kevin. Are you building the diagrams, or are you selling those? Do we have to have the OEM okay the intellectual property like Motor Gen 5 data linking?
So the answer to that is whoever is the person who owns their 3Kit subscription really owns any of the content that they put in there. It's similar to, I guess, a very basic example would be something like Dropbox or Google Drive. You buy their platform, it allows you to put content in and define how other people can interact with it. So anything that would be of concern of that would be something each person needs to make sure that they are able to actually present online. So hopefully that answers your question, Kevin. Continue through.
Guys, any other? Let's see if I saw a bumper. We talked about that. There was the earlier question, as I understand correctly, that we need to give you the CAD or design file, and then your system allows output with different options.
Yeah, so our system takes a lot of different inputs to anything that can really be interpreted as a 3D file is typically something you can input into 3Kit. So for these like hard metal things that are designed through, CAD systems, CAD's usually a really good starting point. You may strip out specifics or internals that somebody may not see or you may not find important. You may actually do that in our system as well. Where it happens in the process doesn't matter. It could also be that you don't have too much configuration or attention to detail needed for these. You just simply want people to be able to move these things around in a different way online and maybe experience them in augmented reality, where you could use a 3D scanner to simply scan an object, put it into 3Kit, and then get cross-browser, cross-phone type support for that for augmented reality use cases as well. So there's a variety of inputs you could put into the system, CAD being kind of on one polar end of it, taking images and working with a 3D modeler kind of being on the other polar end, and all of the different areas in between that allow the content to be in there. Once the content's in 3Kit, you start pairing it up to the commercial aspects of it. So what SKUs do these line up to? What configuration options exist to either create variants or tying it to metadata and attribute to make sure filtering and fitment take place. But once they're in the system, it becomes very reusable. And a good example of that would be a fabric or a paint finish. If you offer the same item in, or I'd say multiple items in the same fabric or paint finish, you can reuse that definition of that paint across all the different models, really reducing the amount of time it takes to get this stuff ready. And the bigger and more diverse your catalog is, the more value our customers find out of 3Kit, because fewer inputs can cover a broader and broader catalog. Let's see.
Thank you for going through that. Do you have, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you, Kevin.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I was going to kill both of us if I kept on typing, so I apologize for that.
Yeah.
So I used to work for a lot of photo studios, and understanding Ismo Cars was one of them. And so I understand a lot of the layering process and all of that. I love what you guys are doing, and very interested to hearing. So I love the outputs. You were showing all the different outputs and how you can edit on the fly, and how the system takes care of all the technical side from the back end. But I think what was missing from the presentation, at least from my point of view, and maybe I'm totally off, is how a customer or user would interact with your system. So I know you were touching on that briefly right before I got on here, but what are some best practices to interact with your system? Is it sending you, hundreds of images? Am I taking photographs and uploading them in the system, and then using your system to make these great images? Or do I have to send you these CAD, again, I'm just using this terminology, but the CAD files only, or 3D scans, and then I use the system? Or are you guys doing the manipulation after I upload them? Or can you talk really through the process flow of how an end consumer like myself might, I used the example earlier, sell a bumper online where one has fog holes and one doesn't. So do I have to take 36 images around in a circle of the one that does, and then 36 images of the one that doesn't, send you all images, and then you can put those together to make the quote unquote different options? Or how does that work?
No, it's a great question. And it's to just quickly jump on to your answer, or to the way you phrase the question, it's really the latter one. We care more about components than we do finished products, because the kind of coming together of all the individual components and options to create a finished good or a finished system is really one of the key problems that 3Kit looks to solve. It's to take super scaled or almost infinite configurability and boil that down to core components that you define independently. And then we don't care about which combination of them are selected. We work to create a complete visual. And the way somebody might work with the system, it could be very hands-on if you are a kind of more experienced person with either CAD or 3D design. It could be you work directly with us. We have a services department. We have a huge network of partners that work on this, but it all is underlined by what you saw in these front end demos, like this luggage one or this C-Tech cabinet configurator. I hope my screen is sharing again.
Yeah.
It's all powered by a back end here where you can see actually the catalog of things, as well as the assets that underlie all of these being kind of stored and broken out into components. Like here's a model of a sink faucet, scene that it's actually dropped in. Here's all the metals that make that up. So a power user can certainly come in here and say, you know, I'm able to come into the editor and understand what these different things mean and how to define them. You might work with us to define them. You basically tell us in, you know, English or a spreadsheet what these things are that you need in there, and we'll work to define the 3D components that that you may not have familiarity with. So it's a bit of a spectrum, but you know, I think our breadth of different types of customers and industries we serve really shows that you could be a huge corporation that has huge experience in doing this and handle it on your own, to we have two-person companies who sell one configurable product that just told us, hey, we need this, and this color and these options, and we work to get that created for them almost in an agency fashion.
Thank you for walking through that.
Yep, of course.
Any other questions? All right. Great. Well, hey, thanks again. Everyone, Kevin, thank you. Appreciate it, especially you having the questions and engaging with us. Yeah, that's all we've got from the 3Kit side. Just want to say thanks again, everyone, for hosting us. We'll be following up with y'all and happy to show you more demos. And you know, sort of the key to engagement is we're happy to show you how this works for your specific company. And like I said, we'll follow up.
Yeah, thank you for having us, and thank you for all the engagement and questions out there.